All right, guys, we are now live for another Thursday night conversations with Commodores. And I've got Cool Breeze, Brett Hayes with us. How you doing today, Brett?
I'm doing great, Bernie. Good to see you, man. It's an honor to be a part of the show of yours, man. It seems like
Oh,
it's becoming kind of the it thing if you're a Commodore and you happen to play football for.
well, anybody who's anybody is on this show. So
It feels like it.
just
Yeah.
anybody.
I
No,
feel good about it, man. I'm excited, right?
I'm so pleased to have one of my former teammates, Brett Hayes, with us tonight. Guys, as you know, each Thursday night, and we've been doing this for several months now, I try to bring conversations with Commodores of former teammates and coaches, trainers, cheerleaders, you name it. Anybody who wants to share their story and some laughs and some half truths about how great they were back in the day, this is the place to be. So I'm looking forward to diving in with Brett. And Brett, for folks who haven't kept up with you on social or may not know what's currently going on with you and your family, catch us up a little bit and then we'll go back in the time machine and bring it back forward.
Fantastic. So I'm a native of Los Angeles, California, but I'm currently living in Portland, Oregon. Been up here for 13 plus years. I work for Nike. Started off with them as their global real estate counsel for several years, and then I moved over to the business on the real estate side. And I'm currently heading up North America real estate on the retail side for Nike, and married 21 plus years to a woman who actually went to the same high school as I did, although we weren't together at that time. But she's from the same neighborhood that I grew up in, and we've got two great young boys, 18 and 13. And yeah, man, just enjoying the Pacific Northwest. So
Excellent, excellent. And I should have pointed this out. I want you to know I'm representing tonight.
I see that, man. You got the swoosh. I appreciate that. It's good to see. It's good to see. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
guys, for those of you who didn't know Brett back in the day, Brett was a couple of classes behind me in the mid to late 80s, coming out and we're going to get into his recruiting story because it's a fun one in a minute. But I just was always so impressed. Now, Brett was with me for a little bit on the scout team, but he didn't hang too much with us. He couldn't be bothered with our talents down there. But Brett always had such a cool demeanor, such a calm influence. And frankly, I think you need that as an athlete. And I don't know if it was God given or if it was something you developed over time, but I suspect that you probably still bring that into your professional endeavors and share that with your kids. So I've always appreciated that about you, Brett. But we got a couple of folks who've rolled in, a couple names you may recognize. Corey L. Harris.
Nice. Snake.
Gary Gerson has joined us, OJ Fleming, and there'll be some others to roll in.
Fantastic.
But Brett, you have done a tremendous amount of travel, I know, with your various jobs with Nike over the years. But before we even get to that, I want to go back to, I don't know what shoes you wore back in the day when you were starring in high school. Maybe they were Nikes, maybe they were something else. Maybe that was a precursor you didn't know about. But you grew up in California, ended up in the deep South playing in the SEC. You got to take us to some of that origin, that story. How in the world did you get on the radar of a school over 2,000 miles away?
Yeah, Bernie, great question, and it's a great story. So I grew up in South LA, very close to Inglewood, a 5 minute, brisk run to the Great Western Forum where the Lakers played. All I knew was LA. I was an LA boy. I was a West Coast guy. I was a Pac-10 at that time versus Pac-12 guy. And I went to a small Catholic high school in Playa del Rey, California, where I was a running back and an inside linebacker. And was this kind of unique blend of, growing up in the hood of LA, but also kind of on the on the beach side of LA as well. And so as I started to get recruited, and I was a nerd too, right? I was really in the school. I knew since the 5th grade that I wanted to be an attorney. And so I was doing everything that I could to kind of bolster my resume in order to get to an Ivy League school. And when I started to get recruited, my #1 school came up, which was Stanford, which was very interested in me. I was looking at Princeton, I was looking at Dartmouth, and that's where my headspace was at. And so Stanford was really pushing for me, going for me, and that's where I thought I was going to go. I had an uncle who worked in the budget department of Stanford, and so I'd been up to the farm many times and really understood and knew that campus. I think John Elway's father was the head coach at the time, and so they were recruiting me heavily. My dad, God bless his soul, he's passed, several years ago. Gave me some advice because Stanford at the time was telling me to commit early or think about committing early. Tell any other schools that I was going to commit early. And my dad had said, hey, I don't know anything about this recruiting thing, but I do know you don't put all your eggs in one basket. So why don't you pull out 1 or 2 schools that you like, and don't tell them or don't say anything to them. Because I was like, Dad, it's Stanford. This is my #1 school. I'm all in. And he was like, just hold off. And so Vanderbilt had recruited me, and Greg Mad Dog Mantooth was the recruiter. Why they used Mantooth as the recruiter for a West Coast kid, and if anybody and my brother football players of that time know, Greg had the deepest Southern drawl of anybody in the world. He would call up, and he would always get my mom for whatever reason. And he'd call and he'd start off like, hey, Mrs. Hayes, this is Greg Mantooth calling from Vanderbilt University. Is Bread there? And my mom would be like, who? Bread Hayes. And she'd scream out. She's like, Brett, there's some man calling you Bread. And I'm like, that's Coach Mantooth, Mom. That's Coach Mantooth. Like, it's okay. He's from Vanderbilt. And so we developed a relationship. Anybody who knows Coach Mantooth, he's super authentic and was just a down-to-earth guy. And he didn't try to oversell Vanderbilt. He just explained it to me. He'd explained the SEC to me. And I hadn't really focused on it. I was a Pac-10 guy. And so then I started to really pay attention to the schools, and obviously Alabama and Georgia and, Tennessee, and then the history of Vanderbilt and the education. And I said, hey, this is on par with the Stanford, just in the South. And so I think
I don't mean to interrupt you, but were you in 11th grade when this was going on?
Yes, I was in 11th grade when all of this was going on. And so I put kind of Vandy in that bucket. I put a couple of other schools in that bucket. A couple of weeks prior to Letterman 10th day, Stanford kind of disappeared off of the map. And the coaches that were calling me every week, every Friday, stopped calling. And, come to find out later, you hear about this later, they had made their designation and moved on. Kind of a fun fact, Eric Bieniemy was part of my recruiting class. He played for Bishop Armont. He's a running back there. And we became good friends after, just through the recruiting process. And he had said, yeah, man, this is just this is just a part of how football is. But I'm an only child. My dad, had no exposure to kind of college football and how things were done. And so, I felt like I was left kind of standing. I didn't know what to do. My dad said, hey, did you hold off telling any schools? And I said, yeah, Vanderbilt. I really like them. I hadn't said anything. And I called up Coach Mantooth and told him, hey, I think I want to come to Vandy. And he told me, we'll welcome you with, open arms. And that was it. I'd done the recruiting trip out there. I think Jeff Mays was my host at the time, and Jeff was an amazing just host and took me all through the campus and the school. But, I got to tell you, Brent, Bernie, I didn't have any friends out there in Nashville. I didn't have any family. It was a big step for this kind of LA kid. And that's all I knew, to go out to Nashville.
You're coming from the West Coast. You're from a small prep school or private school. I don't know how much of a bubble really was around you, but being an only child, that's a huge leap. Coming 2,000 miles east and committing to a school that is nothing like what maybe you had been used to or exposed to. But it sounds like your dad had some very wise advice for you, just being a father, not having that experience. So you got to take us to your recruiting visit. Was it in the wintertime? Was it cold? What was the temperature? What was going on that weekend that you came to for your visit?
I can't remember, but the weather wasn't bad. It wasn't hot nor cold. So thankfully it was a perfect time because I'm not a guy who likes to be in the cold, I'll be honest with you. But, I got a chance to walk the campus, to go to the fraternity parties, to, check out the classes, to speak with, some of the professors, to meet with, I think Brad Bates at the time, the strength and conditioning coach. And, the program's so solid and so straightforward and so good and so easy. And then just honestly, everybody I had met, from players, I think Mark Johnson Stump, was around at that time. I think I got introduced to Eric Crawford at the time, who Everett Crawford, who became kind of a mentor once I finally came into Vanderbilt. Everybody was so welcoming and open, and it just felt right. It felt good. And you're right. I was in a small high school environment. I was in a small bubble. The furthest I had ever traveled was, to Pittsburgh, which is where my family is from. But outside of that, I'd never really been to too many other places. So yeah, going to Nashville, going to the Bible Belt, going to the South, which I had no experience. This was like 87. It was a big leap, but I think it made all the difference for me in my career and how I approach things, to be able to go so far away, to be able to survive that. And Vandy had a great, just in the football department, had a great program as far as support for not only football, but just education, and just holistically how we approach things. And so for me, it was the right place to go. I couldn't imagine have gone, going to any other place. But to get there, I joke with people. So when I showed up, and I told you, remember, I was from South LA, so I grew up in the neighborhood. If you think about, and I got friends on, right? Movies like Boys in the Hood or The Wood, like that was the life that I kind of grew up in. But I went to this beach-oriented high school, which, gets us into, I'm sure, some other things we'll talk about, right? And so when I showed up in Nashville, I showed up to Vanderbilt, like I had like puka shell necklace on. I had like OP shorts, flip-flops. I was this black beach kid, and I think black folks were like, they didn't know what I was, and the white kids didn't know. I didn't fit in any box, and I didn't even know I was different, right? Like I was like, I just showed up, but I was like, I'm not quite anybody in this environment. But that was good for me. It allowed me to know I could express myself and be who I was, and people, to your point, kind of accepted me who I was. That cool breeze attitude, that environment is kind of where I came from, right? Like, you got to be cool under fire. You can't be stressed. There's a lot of fluidity that happens in the city, right? Sometimes it's calm, sometimes it elevates really quickly. And so just kind of being calm and cool under pressure is what helps. And so it got put to the test when I went to Nashville, because it was I was a fish out of water. I was a unicorn. And I became okay with that. And I kind of embraced that. And, to have a kid so far from, out in the West Coast, there weren't a lot of kids from the West Coast, in particular LA, that were going to Vandy.
I remember we had a defensive back, Allen. Oh, forgive me. He was 3 years older than me, so he may have been
Yep.
off the roster. Alan
Yep.
Roman. Alan Roman.
Oh, God bless. Yeah. Yes, he was the first.
Louis Woolridge was on the roster at that point.
Yep, Sweet Lou.
Any other California?
Nazim Anderson, I think, was kind of, he came behind me maybe 2 years after me, and he was from the LA environment.
Tim Walker, running back.
Yep. So there were a few of us out there, but not many. And that, it's tough being that far away, but it all turned out for the best.
Was it tougher, looking back on it, was it tougher on you or tougher on your family, your parents, for that separation that first semester?
That's a really great question. So it was tough for my mom, for sure. It was tougher for them, I think. For me, everything was so new and moving so fast.
You were so busy.
Yeah.
Acclimated to big boy football. Not that you didn't play it in high school, but this
is true.
And the academics were no joke. Getting to just kind of find your footing. You're so busy. I know that my first semester, there were periods, because it was way before cell phones, I would get 3 or 4 messages from others. Your mom's called again. Your mom's called again. Yeah. But I can, you being an only child, I suspect it was tough on you folks for a while.
It was, and great stories connected to that. So, like I said, it was tough for mom. My dad loved coming out to Nashville. He loved the whole SEC thing. He loved just the pageantry of it all. So he would call me constantly. How's it going? What's going on? He wanted to kind of live through me and see what was going on. I think they, and as did I, didn't really understand some of the Commodore pageantry, right? Like, so when they initially came out, they had their t-shirts and their jeans on, and then, you come in and the student section be a little sparse in the beginning, right? Because everybody's kind of tailgating, and then all of a sudden, kids with the sports coats and the sundresses would all show up, and they're like, it was a football game. I'm like, yeah, but that's how we celebrate here. And so just them getting used to all of the different pageantry was unique. And my dad fell in love with the whole thing and would love to come out. So they came out quite a bit, which was not cheap, as you can imagine. And to a lot of my football games the first couple years, which was nice. And it kind of bridged the gap, during the fall season to have them out. But one story I got to tell. This is super funny. So when I come out in August, right, and this is my first time coming, and they tell me that Tim Green, I don't know if you remember Tim Green, big Tim Green, right, was going to meet me at the airport to help facilitate my move into the dorm and all that good stuff. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And so I get off the plane and I'm looking for Tim Green, but all of a sudden I see this giant walking, like, this man, like 6'7", I think he was 6'7", 275. He's walking above everybody else, and he's coming and he's looking at me. And I'm like, yeah, if that's Tim Green, and he's playing on the defense, I'm getting back on the plane, right? The story being, I had never seen people this big before, right? Like, again, I was West Coast. Guys are smaller but faster. We don't really play with kids who are like 6'6", 6'7". I'd never seen guys that big before, 275 pounds. Yeah. And so he was the first person I really saw when I landed in Nashville at the airport. And he was a gentle giant. He was a great man. And he embraced me. I think he saw my face and he was like, "You must be Brett." And I was like, "Yeah, are you Tim?" And he goes, "Yeah." I'm like, "Do you play on offense?" He goes, "Oh yeah." I'm like, "Thank God." And I give him a bear hug, and we became, buddies from that point forward.
Could you imagine if Greg Smith would have shown up with him at 9?
No. Again, my first practice, seeing some of the kids, some of the guys who were playing.
Yeah.
Again, I'd never seen people that big or who could move that fast.
It's amazing what you think back and that you actually remember just weird facts, weird things, put you in time and place. I still remember the name of Tim's intramural basketball team. They were the Marauders. Why I remember that? I didn't even play for the team. Why I remember that? I don't know. But Brett, we got some more folks who want to say hello. Sweet Lou has joined us. Thank you, Louie.
Hello.
Pat Fitch has joined us. Michael Metzger has joined us. Thank you, guys.
Nice.
Yep. And Brett, who was your roommate or who did you room with? What dorm was it your freshman year?
Sure. Oh, I think it was Branscombe
Quadrangle.
And Tom Robleski.
Robo
was my roommate. He was a wild man. And I'd never roomed with anybody. Again, I was an only child. So
and boy, he was a treat to be your roommate. That's awesome. Now, Robo, I'm trying to get on the show in October or November. He actually lives not too far from Nashville and has a daughter who's at the University of Alabama. So I connected with him recently. Boy, what a combination. Robo's from Ohio, big defensive lineman, and here you're a running back from SoCal. Awesome.
Yes, it was an odd couple type of relationship, but it worked out great, and he helped me to see different points of view very quickly.
I got to give a shout out to Doc Wilson, who's just joined us. Marcus Wilson, hey bud.
Tell Doc I said hello, man. My man.
Awesome.
In fact, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead with your thought.
No, that setup, the setup you did on the intro for me on that one picture was Doc. I think he was giving me the ball, but more likely I think he took the ball away and ran. Yeah, so.
Doc did like to turn on the afterburners, such athleticism. One quick story about Doc. We were in, I believe it was in Knoxville, the last game of the year, maybe my junior, senior, I can't remember. But the quarterbacks, for some stupid reason, decided to have a long toss competition. Who could throw the ball the furthest? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if Healy is watching us or not. Mike went, he threw it, and I think I came close to about where he was. Maybe a couple other guys, and here comes Doc, and he just blew us all away. Just natural gift and just let it fly. He overthrew us by probably 20 yards.
I believe it. Yeah. Super athlete, man. Could have did anything. Done anything. He was slash before there was slash. So
that's right. Well, your freshman year, did you redshirt or did you stay?
I did. Yeah, they had let me play all the way up to the very max. So I think my last game was against Auburn, which was an amazing game, or it might have been Kentucky. And then I got redshirted that freshman year.
Well, let's talk about that. You going into the huddle or special teams or whatever your first action on the field. In high school, what was the biggest crowd you had ever played in front of?
Oh, God. It's small. Again, Catholic high school. Maybe
8,000, maybe?
How much?
8,000 to 10,000 for a rival game?
I was going to say maybe 3,000 to 4,000.
Okay. So you line up in an SEC game for the first time, whether you're playing specialty, I don't know what it was. Take us into that mindset because everybody's got some kind of butterflies or just got some extra juice flowing. So take us into there a little bit if you can remember that first time you got on the field as coming.
Maybe I'll tell you this because the game that was most memorable to me my freshman year was when we played Auburn at Auburn. Mm-hmm. And it may have been homecoming game for them. Either way, it was like band day. They had multiple bands there. We were playing like at noon. It was televised. I just remember us walking out on the field and it was like 1.5 inch cut grass, perfectly cut.
Nice as
with a diagonal colored grass. So it was dark green, light green, dark green, light green. Never seen anything like it in my life. And then I remember us coming out of the tunnel and, to run onto the field and coming out. It's perfect day. It's perfect grass with all the bands, all the crowd. And I don't know if that stadium seated maybe 80,000
Yeah.
folks somewhere near. And it was everything I'd ever imagined, seeing on TV. It was everything that I'd ever imagined. And, I got a chance to get into that game. The speed of the game was something I had never experienced. I think that was the first kind of, thing, was just how fast everything was moving, and just how fast you had to be ahead and know your assignments and get there before you even thought. Because if you thought, it was too slow. And then how fast and how big everybody was. But just, yeah, in the huddle, the intensity of it. Eric Jones was quarterback at the time, right? And he was a field general, cool under fire. And it was big boy football, man. It was serious, and it was a lot of fun. But it was a lot going on, and just learning from that and trying to slow the game down and make sure that it was all about really preparation. And I think that was my biggest takeaway, really having to put in the time.
Your first game being in an offensive huddle, and Auburn probably had at least 10 potential or future pros on the other side of the ball. Welcome to big boy football, Brett Hayes. Holy smokes. Do you remember either getting in a good hit or getting a lick on you and just, all right, I'm not watching this game, I'm in this game?
Well, now, yeah, so great story was, I think, and this was probably my second year, but it was against Alabama at Alabama. Mm-hmm. And I had to block like the defensive end. And no, maybe it was my freshman year. I think it was. I had to block the D end, and I'm trying to do all of the mechanics of put your arms up here, get into his chest, drive. And this guy came in and just laid into my stomach. I crumbled. I think he sacked EJ, and I just remember, I think Bill Schmitz was my running back coach at the time. He was just losing his mind on the sidelines, and they actually ran the same play again. And I was, after I recovered from being out of air because the guy hit me right in the stomach. That's where I realized, I was like, this is a fight. This is not mechanics. You have to do what you got to do. And so I think same thing. The guy knew we're running the same play, and I hit him in the stomach. And he got pissed, right? And I was like, well, I mean, we're in a battle, man. Like, this is it. That's what you gave me, so you got it back. And that's when we were like, okay, here we go. And that's where I was like,
well, Brett, I don't know if you remember who that player was, but there's a 50-50 chance it was Derek Thomas.
It might have been.
Derek was still on Alabama's team in '87, so it could have been him.
It might have been.
You never know. Every week in the SEC game, you're going up against future pros.
Yeah, it was a totally different level of play, and I realized really quickly I had to step up, and
let's step off the field. You get through your freshman season. Mm-hmm. Schoolwork is no joke for an incoming freshman, or for anybody, really. Yeah. When was it that you felt some confidence about your schoolwork, when you really were like, all right, I'm getting a handle on what's going on the field. I need to get a handle. And maybe you did from day one. Maybe you were one of those guys. But take us off the field completely into the schoolwork, and what did you enjoy about that aspect of college?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I was both a political science and a human resource major. I was in Peabody, but like I said, I always wanted to become a lawyer. And so I won't say that it was a shift, but it was a shift I knew that I was prepared to take, right? And I knew that I was just gonna have to be committed, especially being kind of a double major, to just putting in the time. I think, so I never felt like the schoolwork was anything I couldn't handle. It was just the time and the balance of that plus football, right? And just being that student athlete, because, the professors, especially on the political science side, they yeah, you're an athlete, but so what? You're student first. And so, the work always came first. And so I knew I didn't have any, room for excuses or errors there, and just had to be committed, committed to the work. And so, yeah, I just, that was kind of the tone I had set in high school. That's the environment I knew I wanted to be in that, you know, academic, higher level environment. And so I knew I had to commit myself. I'll say this too, like my mom and dad, my mom started working for a company called Thomas Brothers Maps in the early 70s, which was like the mapping company of LA. And she started as a executive assistant to the president of that company. And she worked her way up to being VP of marketing and advertising over several years, right? My dad was a salesman for a janitorial sales, a supply company. But he also partnered up with my grandfather to start a maintenance company on the side. And so I kind of came from an environment of what I would call grinders, people who just put in the time and the effort and the work. My dad went to Ohio State, but he didn't finish. My mom kind of went to finish school, but she didn't really, they were looking to me to kind of be that one to actually finish and make it happen. So that was what I was committed to doing, and knew I had to just put in the time to make it happen. So, that's what I did.
They certainly, sounds like your dad had what we commonly know now as a side hustle before people even knew what that term was. It
Yes,
sounds
he did.
not only did they instill a great work ethic, but they probably also helped you to be organized, because that's the only way a D1 athlete in the SEC, especially at Vanderbilt, can survive, much less thrive. But before we head into our next subject, we got some new folks I want to make sure. AOK, one of my high school teammates and former Vanderbilt teammate, Aristotle Onassis Kirkland.
Oh, fine. What's up, Frat? Aristotle Onassis Kirkland in the house. Yo.
Pat Fitch, another Dothan Northview product and teammate of mine in high school.
My man, Phi Nu.
Yep. And former student body president at Vanderbilt, Pat Fitch. Let's see, Coach Gary Shepard. Thanks, Coach, for stopping by.
Hey.
David Kropp. Awesome. Billy, one of the key cops, Billy Smith.
Bill Smith, nice.
Jim Anguiano. Well, thank you guys for everybody stopping by and showing B. Hayes, cool breeze, some love tonight. That's awesome. Now, Brett, when you were not studying, when you were not having to deal with football, when you were not dealing with fraternity, and when you were not sleeping, where were some of your favorite hangouts, if any, on campus, off campus?
Probably Banditos was probably the worst culprit of all. That was the default hangout. And then, there was some really great, colleges around us, Fisk, Tennessee State, Mary Medical College. So we had a lot of friends and fraternity brothers over there. So we spent time over there. But yeah, I would probably say I stayed in the towers, as did you. And so going down to the basement, hanging out down there, going to Banditos or in the cafeteria, those were the hangouts for me.
Well, I still cannot walk into a Gaddy's Pizza. I don't know if they're still around, but I just shudder at the thought of Sunday night dinners at Gaddy's. It's still not something I would ever do, but
okay, then on that end, and I don't know if you ever experienced this. Well, we never had a White Castle coming from the West Coast. So doing White Castle, especially at 1 a.m. when you had too much to drink, that was always happening. And then there was this place called Ed's Fish and Pizza. I have no idea if you ever experienced that one.
Where is
that? It was over near going toward TSU.
Okay.
I never had the pizza. I only got the fish sandwiches. They had these fried fish sandwiches with a lot of hot sauce, onions, pickles, and cheese. that was like the best thing in the world. And that was kind of like my guilty pleasure.
To current times, your two teenage sons, and when you mention that kind of food, what is their response?
They just shake their head and just go, "Who is this guy?" Right? Like, who's eating that?
That's
None of
awesome.
them are eating what I'm talking about, right?
Oh,
So, yeah.
that's so good. I'm sure your wife just kind of rolls her eyes. It's okay, guys.
Well, I took my wife there. If honestly, when we visited Nashville, and it's not there anymore, but I took her there, and there was no place to eat. You literally had to like sit on the curb, and that's literally what we did. And she was like, "I can't believe you got me sitting on the curb eating a fish sandwich." But
That's right.
that was
And
my
now
thing.
the White Castle is downtown. It's about a mile south of campus, and no longer is it out at Green Hills. Doc says they never sold one slice of pizza. We got a couple more folks. We got Will Chicken Wing Pryor.
Chicken wing in the house, fantastic.
And Will, I know you're in Shreveport, and that storm's not too far from you, bud. So I hope you and yours are doing okay. We certainly got you guys in our thoughts and prayers right now.
I thank him for showing up, given everything that's going on in Shreveport, and I hope all friends and family are well out there.
Amen to that. Well, Brett, let's keep coming forward. I want to talk a little bit about. I want to stay on the field a little bit. Share with us maybe some memories that you have, some experiences, whether it's practice, hanging out in the training room, the locker rooms, trips that you took during that time period. What are some things, some memories for you?
So great, yeah. So I think my earliest memories are just trying to stay alive, honestly. So if you think about it, I had Damon Winston chasing after me. I had, Cedric Moore, Derek Sardor, just beasts, right? The Gaines brothers were out there, Chris Gaines, you guys that I'd never really see, the strength, the speed, the whole, ferocity of how they approach the game, really is what kind of drove me. When I showed up to Vanderbilt, I was a tailback at about 190 pounds. And, I think I got hit either by Cedric Moore or Damon Winston one time, and thought I had lost all, spirit in my body. And I remember, yeah, I saw the light. I remember my dad called me. Remember my dad called, he was interested, and he was like, "How's it going?" I said, "I think I died and came back." And he goes, "What are you talking about?" And I tell him, and it was at that point, it might've been my second year, he was like, "Listen, man, you got to get into the training room. You got to bulk up. You got to get stronger." Just my body, it couldn't take some of that pounding. And that's what got me into the training room. And I think I went from like 190 pounds over the course of a year and a half to about 225. And that took me from that tailback slot role into, which I knew, into more of that fullback type of environment. But I say that's what saved my body from just the intensity of the sport. But yeah, a lot of my memory is in practice, running from those guys, trying to figure out how to get stronger, faster, better. And the games themselves, I was a journeyman, right? And as you think about over the years, some of the top running backs that we had come in, and I think we went from more of that single or, one or two running back movement to more of a running back by committee type of thing. You think about Anthony Carter, you think about Carlos Anthony, you think about, Derek Payne, Corey Harris. I mean, we had just some phenomenal running backs that were all playing kind of collectively together. And it was just trying to find time, to get on the field to showcase. But, I think a lot of those guys were equally, if not, more talented, obviously. But it was phenomenal to be a part of all of that.
But you also had the additional factor of Watson Brown leaving during the time that you still had eligibility. And then Coach DiNardo comes in, completely different type of a coach. Take us, I graduated while Watson was my coach the whole time. I think he had one more year, the season of 90, but then DiNardo came in, but you still had eligibility left. So what was the transition like with Coach DiNardo?
So, Bernie, what a phenomenal question. Look, I would say that my time under Watson was choppy. And, his offensive philosophy and how I fit into that offense never really kind of jived and never really fit. And it is what it is. No worries there. When DiNardo came in, his philosophy, and at the time I had moved more into that fullback role, fit very well. I started to run better under him, got to a point where I had that 5th year of eligibility left, but I had also pretty much matriculated to the point where I could graduate in like 4.5 years. And so while I think I was thriving under Jerry's program, and in spring practice I was getting a ton of carries, I was doing really well, super excited about our potential and my potential to be a key factor in the offense. I was also trying to figure out, I'm about to time out from a credit standpoint. And so that's, interestingly enough, I was looking at either trying to go to law school for a year or to business school. And that's what happened. I applied for law school, fundamentally got in, but they were I told them I can't have a full load while I'm playing football. And, law school said, hey, that's just not how we're set up. So if you can't go fully, then it's not going to work on the law school side. And so then I looked at business school, but my heart wasn't in. They were going to give me the ability to be flexible on my schedule to allow for me to play football in the fall, but my heart wasn't in business school. So I made the decision to just finish school and then to head back home and kind of put up my shoes. But I say to myself, what if I had the ability to stay at least one more year under DiNardo? He was a player's coach. He spoke to me as a player, and I responded really well to him. And I think the holistic coaching staff was different and more in line with where I was as an athlete.
Sure.
But it was an interesting transition, right? And I wish I would have had a chance to play under more.
I'm sure it was not an easy decision. That's what I'm hearing
Yeah.
from you. But ultimately, it worked out for you. I mean, you went on to law school. Did you go that next? You graduated in May and then go in that fall, or did you take a year, or what'd you do?
No, and you're you said it earlier, just that balance of school and football. By the time I got home, I was exhausted, from managing both school and football, and I needed to take a break. And so I took a year off. I got a job working for Enterprise Rent-A-Car in their executive leadership program. Right. It was just kind of a way to suck you into being a rent-a-car salesperson. Worst job ever. But that year allowed me just a little breath and space and time to know, yes, I really wanted to get back to law school. And so I took that year off and then applied for Loyola Law School, which is, there's 2 Loyolas, one in Chicago, one in LA, and I went to the one in LA, and kind of the rest is history from that point forward.
I think that's common in taking that year. I did the same thing. I deferred law school for a year. I clerked here in Birmingham, my hometown, for the law firm that I eventually went to out of law school, but I needed that year. And just personally, I didn't watch college football. I didn't go to any games. I didn't care about the sport. I was mentally just wiped from it.
Yeah.
Two roommates just thought I had lost my mind because they were huge college football fans.
Yeah.
And I just needed that year. But
Yeah.
it helps to clear your head and make a break. So I certainly applaud that. But and we're getting close toward the end of our discussion, but Brett, I gotta ask you, you've been all over the world with your job. I know that you have been with Nike for many years now, but now they've domesticated you in the United States as opposed to globally.
Yeah.
But what I want to ask is, you've really shared so many life lessons just telling us your story and getting to where you are. And I'm sure you've shared these with your teenage sons to the point where they just kind of, okay, Dad, we get it. All dads do that. But what that transition coming out east and just establishing yourself on your own for the first time, and all of the success and the failures, if you had any, what are some of those life lessons that maybe you want to share with us? That, let's say we've got some high school kids who may want to go to Vanderbilt, maybe end up watching this, or any other school, and want to play ball. What do you share with them?
I think first and foremost, one, thank you for asking that question. Two, my advice would be take the risk. Take the risk, right? The fact that I took that risk to go 2,000 miles away changed my life forever. Because, it took me out of my comfort zone. It put me in an environment where, yes, I had to sink or swim, and that's okay, right? Sometimes you swim, sometimes you don't, and then you kind of dust yourself off and try it again. So you got to take the risk, know that you could fail, but then if it doesn't work out, you dust yourself off and do it again. And so when I left and was able to kind of, manage through it, I knew I had the capability to do anything. But the beauty of it was the exposure to people and places and thoughts, ways of thinking, ways of approaching something that I would never trade. And it allowed me the comfort to go to places all around the world. I've been to 5 out of 7 continents, been to Australia, London, Amsterdam, Singapore, Korea, you name it, because I took the risk to go to Vanderbilt. And the fact that I, had that experience, and it's so interesting, especially, when I was practicing law, I did, deals globally. So, in particular in the US, I would have conversations with people, and invariably other lawyers, you get into, where'd you go to school, right? And I'd be able to say, I went to Vanderbilt. You're like, but you're practicing in LA. And I'm like, well, where did you go to school? Well, interestingly enough, a lot of times I had road trip to a part of the city or country where, or state rather, where they went to school. Like, so we had some kind of mutual experience that I could relate to, or understanding that, folks came from the South or the Northeast or Midwest. I was like, I had some experiential connection that allowed me to connect with them, which allowed us to analyze a problem or a deal in a way that I wouldn't have got otherwise if I had kept myself in that more isolated bubble world, right? The more you expand out, the more you have the opportunity to relate to people, the more you have the opportunity to, communicate and solve issues and problems that you wouldn't otherwise have. And so that's been the biggest thing for me. And that's what I kind of push on my kids is just take the risk. It's okay. Like, there's either, me, their mom, or other people out there that can help you analyze the problem, but I can't do it for you. You have to step out on your own and go out there and try it. Right. And then, we'll see how it all plays out. But that, life is meant to be lived. And I think me going, 2,000 miles away, not having any friends or family, and just having to figure it out, I've been doing that since I left, as a 17-year-old kid, from my parents' house. I've been doing that same blueprint, hasn't changed, right? It's pretty simple.
Taking that risk, learning yourself what you're about, building that self-confidence has propelled you for the last 30 years. That's just so awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so proud to call you friend, and I appreciate you sharing your story, Brett, but I got to ask you on a little less serious note, did you ever find a place to surf in Tennessee?
No, I did not. And I wish I had. And I know for some of the guys who are online, I was telling Bernie, that I've recently taken back up surfing, which I hadn't done since I've been in high school. Now my body is telling me, maybe you rethink that a little bit, Brett, after I've done it. But honestly, it's breathed new life into me, and it's something that I love the water, I love the ocean, and love just the ability to try to do this. And so that's what I've been doing again. And, I'm passionate about it. So,
Awesome.
You guys will see me out there, I'm sure, on Facebook, on my board eventually, as I get back into shape.
We need either photos or video of you and your sons out there, and maybe your wife too, if she surfs. That would be awesome.
It would be, and keep on wishing that one. Neither my boys nor my wife want to get anywhere near the water. I'm the only fish of the family, which is fine. That's my personal go-to spiritual space. But yeah, I'll shoot you something.
Every surfer needs a hype team, and they can be your hype team.
Well, maybe I can get you out, Bernie.
Oh, I'd love to. I'd look like but I'd enjoy it nonetheless.
Okay.
But all right. Thank you so much for taking us on your journey tonight. This was a lot of fun for me. I hope it was for you and so many friends and fraternity brothers, former teammates and classmates have shown out tonight.
Bernie, this was fantastic, man. I really appreciate it. I'm thankful that you're doing this. This is great stuff, man. Just bringing back some of the past and taking us all through kind of these life journeys, whether it be with me or, our other brothers in the sport that we love. And so thank you for doing what you're doing.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. And as you guys know, most of it is true. And as we get older, some of those stories tend to stretch a little bit, but it's all such good fun. And thank you again, Brett. Thank you guys for showing up on Thursday nights. This has been so much fun, and I'm going to keep doing this for the next many weeks. We've got folks lined up, and believe it or not, I've got Coach Roy Kramer, our former athletic director, is going to join us in a few weeks. And at 90 years of age, I asked Coach, are you familiar with Zoom? He said, just give me the code. I think
sounds like you still doing this thing there, Bernie.
Still is doing his thing, and I hope you guys keep doing your thing. But I say this every week, we're going to get through the pandemic. You just got to keep being patient. And even if you don't like wearing a mask for yourself, please wear it for your fellow mankind. You guys anchor down, and we'll see you next Thursday.
Bernie, thanks, man. Take care.